Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Arch Study of You. I am your host, Cameron Gilmore. Buckle up, ladies and gentlemen. We've got an amazing interview with my buddy, Scott. Hold on. Before I go into some of the traditional, who you are, tell me about your background, I need to ask you this question because it is very insightful, and a lot of people that listen to this may not be able to relate, but it's still, I think everybody can relate to the fear or this anxiety that kicked in. When we talked earlier, you had said something, 8 months into starting your own insurance company, you wake up at 4 a.m. and realize, holy crap, I am shy $8,000 of making payroll. What is it like knowing you have people that rely on you for money and you're not able to pay them?
What's it like? It's miserable. It's horrible. I mean, it's like you have God who entrusted you to run this company and give these, people professions that they can pay for their or for their family and provide food on their table. And how do you even go about telling them, you can't provide them a check for the hard work that they did? And I mean, so luckily I didn't have to do that, but it was definitely that morning. It was very much a reality, or I thought it was going to be a reality. And, lucky that it didn't come into fruition, but that's because I have an amazing partner, my wife, and, that it's amazing what people will do when you're open and transparent. And so it was, that was a wild time for sure.
I like that. I'm going to stick with this for a second because you had just been married a few months, right?
Yeah.
You were short, like eight grand. Take us through that conversation that you have. New wife, short, trying to start a business. What is that? Take us through that conversation.
So going back, if I'm going to go back, I'm going to go back and really start from the beginning here and explain. So when I met my wife, I was working for a company and I was their insurance agent, and I was rocking and rolling, doing just crushing numbers. I mean, it was great. I enjoyed my job. I enjoyed the company. I didn't have any problems with the company whatsoever. But unfortunately, I lost my father. He passed away, and I went through. I was married once before, and while I was visiting my dying father, found out like things were happening that was pretty rough. So her and I, amicably, parted ways, and I don't condone divorce. So that was really hard on me, spiritually, and my relationship with God was really bothering me that I went through that, and then watching my father die. So then it was like I was my wife now. I mean, I've been married with her for 10 years this year, and been with her for over 11 years. But it's I wasn't really ready to date anyone. I didn't want to be serious. And, I meet her. She's my, young lady I go on a date with. And I was like, on date one, I was like, crap, this is going to be serious. Like, there's no way getting around this. And so, so the funny joke between my wife and I is like all of our dates for like 2 months was all Subway. Like that's all we did. We went to Subway. And because I didn't want to commit to anything more than a $5 sub. Like I just didn't want to have, this, expensive relationship that, I just wasn't ready. And it was about 2 months in or so. And I remember I was talking to my buddy, and he's like, man, you're an idiot. Like this woman is wonderful. She's perfect for you. And I was like, you're right. I am an idiot. And I forgot like God wants to bless his children. So I was like, I said, okay. So I took her out on this date. I always remember I took her to a place in Virginia Beach, Virginia called Mahi Mas. And I sat down with her and I just said, hey, look, I really do think you're wonderful. And I'm lucky to be with you tonight. I said, I would like to be more serious and, be more committed to you. And she goes, good, because I was about to dump you if you took me to Subway tonight. Like, she's like, and the truth is like when I meet her family, like a couple weeks later, where her cousin comes up and he's like, his name's Jack. And he goes, is this the guy that you were going to break up with? Because all you did was go to Subway. Like, it was, impromptu. And so, like, that was being socialized in the family. And so, and I was definitely intimidated by meeting her dad. He's a retired colonel, infantry army. So, I wasn't really, prepared to meet with him yet. And so anyways, it was just like, so we start dating, and sure enough, I fall in love. She's incredible. And, fall in love, and I propose, probably the coolest proposal I've ever heard in my life. I'm just kidding. There's a bunch out there, but went to the aquarium and had a guy dive into the tank, hold up a sign saying, "Hey, would you marry me?" But here's the funny story. I planned it I didn't know I was planning it because I didn't have kids at the time, but I planned it around spring break.
Mm-hmm.
So there was all these kids in there, and I was like Godzilla, like trying to move them. Get out of my way! I gotta propose. It was pretty wild. So anyway, so she says yes. I mean, of course, I went to her dad first, got his permission. That's hard too, like coming from a divorce, like you, like asking for permission to marry someone's daughter, and especially their first daughter to get married, their oldest daughter, like that's tough. So anyways, he said yes, thankfully. And her dad actually is one of my close friends. It's really awesome because losing my father, he really just kind of stepped right in and like became that father that, that I needed. So we're engaged now. I have a job. And a month later, I get an opportunity to open up my own agency. Now I don't have a job. So because I had to resign. Yeah. So she gets engaged to this guy, has a job, he's divorced. Now he doesn't have a job, he's still divorced. It's like, this is like, where's this going?
That's a great catch. Man, you're a great catch.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm not even that great to look at. So I'm not even sure what happened. But so then we get 3 months before we get married, I open up my first agency. But to tweak on that a little bit, talk about faith, talk about trust. I was supposed to have some financial backing from a friend. I had most of the capital. I needed a couple extra dollars to be able to start the agency up, hire the staff that I needed to get off the ground. I was in Chicago learning, and I get a phone call from my friend. He's like, "Hey, I can't financially back you. I just signed a 5-year lease. I just hired 3 people that are already working for me, like training for 2 weeks. I had to cover payroll. I had to cover this lease. I mean, and the lease was not cheap. That was any advice to new entrepreneurs: find a cheap place, get it cheap, work your way into something beautiful. Don't start at the best place, because having the best looking place is not going to bring in traffic. And so it's like that whole car scenario. Like, what's the point of having a great looking car if it has a crappy motor? Like, you need the motor to be good first and then have the nice looking car. So here we are. I get this phone call. I'm in Chicago. We're like a month and a half away from, opening, or we're a month away from opening up the agency, 3.5 months away from getting married. And I call my wife and I'm like, I got horrible news. I hope they'll allow me to break this lease. I've got to go back to my old company and see if they'll take me back. And, but I just don't have enough money to ring this through. She's like, "Hey, stay there. Don't do anything. And, just finish out the class so that way you can still open up the agency and we'll figure it out." Well, the next day I get a phone call and she's calling me, and then she goes, "Hey, I have my dad on the line with us." And I'm like, "Oh, crap." I said, "He's calling in an airstrike. He's pinpointing my location right now. Like, this is it." And I was like, man, I was, basically in tears, like telling them, like, "Hey, I had everything planned out, but this isn't working." And I was like, I'm really sorry. And I'm, trying my hardest. And he goes, "Scott, don't worry about it. We got you covered. We'll take care of the excess." And I was like, "What?" And so when that happened, it was pretty incredible, moving moment in my life. I've never had someone, and we're not talking $5,000. I mean, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars. And this is I'm not even married to his daughter, no contracts. I'll wire you the funds. There's nothing. Like, he just full carte blanche, trust his daughter, trust me. And, I'm thankful, I paid that back in 1 year. He got all his money back, as I knew that I would be able to do well. But So now fast forward, now we're married and we're like a month in, a month or two into being married. And I didn't really know how to look up how much we were getting paid. It's hard to track in the systems that we had, and I was still learning. And so the only way that I would know how much we're getting paid is by looking at the direct deposit when it hits, and I knew exactly what it would hit every month. So I would wake myself up at like 4 a.m. and open it up, and it's just like, surprise, this is what you're getting. And man, I remember looking at it, and I just like this overwhelming amount of burden just came over me, and stress and anxiety, like all instantaneous. And I was like, how in the world do I look at my wife and my new wife and tell her I've got to file bankruptcy, I've got to shut down the agency, I can't afford this? And sure enough, here we come again. And I just, she looks at me, it's like 5 a.m, 6 a.m. now, and she's like, hey, what's wrong? And I said, just got payroll. I said, I can't hit it, I can't catch it. And she's like, I'll take care of it. And she had like some extra funds, and we put everything together, but there's some funds that I told her, I said, hey, look, you keep your funds. And keep in mind, I, at that time, I also owned 2 properties, had quite a bit of equity. So there's worst case scenario, I could sell. But that was like, it would have been a slow mover at the time. Like it was just, so anyways, we, she covered it, and, thank God we never had to go back to that type scenario again. But man, there's definitely some moments there of concern and, scared moments of what ifs, and, how am I going to do this? But by being transparent, open, communicating, and trusting, then it was pretty amazing how, really worked out.
Oh,
yeah.
Stop it. Stop, guys. Look, if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple or any of those, you need to go to YouTube and watch this. You need to watch this transformation that happened with Scott. First, and we're going to hit these 3. There's 3 points you made that I want to dive a little bit more deeper into, but I have to make this point because when you go back, you can see Scott go from his divorce. You can see kind of his energy change from there. Then he goes from, crap, I'm going to marry this girl. You see him start to get a little more excited. Then you see, I don't have the money. Crap, what am I going to do? The humbleness that comes from him. You can see how humble he is, and like, thank you for believing in me when I didn't really think this was going to be possible.
Yeah.
No,
well,
not-
the thing is like, I also like to add to that is that, I got a very little amount of inheritance from my father. My father was a spender, although he made a ton of money, but he was a spender. And so when he passed away, he had really nothing to show for it. And so I got very little inheritance. When I say little inheritance, I mean, I think it was like maybe 70 grand. And I don't get me wrong, I know 70 grand is a lot of money, but I felt like my father left me this, and it was his last, ditch effort. And for anybody listening, if you have children, get life insurance, have something to protect your family. But that was his final, way of saying, hey, look, I love you. This is the last that I can do to help you live, to provide for yourself. And so I had this sense of obligation and responsibility to do well with that money. It's like, if you look at the, philosophically, like, the 2 children who got their inheritance, one got it early, and, one would bury it, never used it. And the other one went out and spent it. Who was wrong? Like the one that buried it made no money. The one who spent it all, so it's like, so I just had this responsibility. I wanted to do well. I wanted my dad to be proud of me, knowing that, hey, look, I didn't take what you left me, for granted or lightly. I didn't go out and buy a depreciating product like a car. I turned it into something, I turned it into, where I'm at today. So,
man, that's powerful, man. Guys, look, when we talked earlier, I had no clue about the whole, his father-in-law. I had no clue, man. That's good. Okay. I got to ask you this question before I need to segue. So for all of us that have gone through divorce, and then you get to this position of, man, I got to go meet my soon-to-be wife. I'm going to ask her to marry me. Take us through that process. How did you prepare yourself by, you have this label, I'm a quote unquote divorced man. How did you prep yourself on meeting the family? And more importantly, coming off as, yes, I may have the title as being a divorced, but I'm not the typical person or the typical divorcee that the society slaps on top of me.
Yeah. So, the thing is like, some people think that when you get divorced that, it's this, no big deal. Society unfortunately has really downplayed the idea of divorce, I think. And I think it's really unfortunate. Like, you see this show that my wife and I love, it's like just watching a train wreck called Married at First Sight. And people don't even know each other's names and they just get married. And, and it's like when you look at it, it's almost like they make a mockery of marriage, but don't get me wrong. There are cultures out there that believe in that type of marriage. Like, so I'm not going to say it's necessarily a mockery, but the fact is like throughout the entire show, they're like, you could still get a divorce. You can get a divorce. You can get a divorce. And it's like society has this embedded in them that, hey, divorce is okay. I never wanted to be divorced. That was actually a gut punch for sure. And it was not something I wanted in my life. Now, don't get me wrong, looking back, should have never got married in the first place. That was problem number one. I was so in love with the idea of being in love that's, what got me there. So, but, but like meeting my wife and like, that was like, there wasn't even a hesitation or question. Now, for those who've never been through a divorce, I think the second hardest moment of being divorced when you meet someone, first one is having to tell them you're divorced. That's hard in and of itself. But the second one is when you get married and you have to sign that certificate. So you have to sign that certificate and you have to put on there how many, this is your what number of marriage. While she's putting number one, I'm putting number two. And that sucks. Like, that to me is just like, that's not fair to her that I have to recognize my first marriage on my marriage certificate to her. Like, I never understood that. And I still don't think it's right. But the other things in there, like what's interesting is like, we're such a blessed family. And I really believe, and I truly believe that, yes, I believe God blesses his children. I believe that God blesses me, like, and he blesses my wife and my children, no doubt. But I believe that many of the blessings that we received is because my wife is so incredible. And she did things in her life to make sure that God, was pleased with her and in her decisions and what she did. So for me, I call it riding on her coattail blessings because like God I just feel is just so pleased with her. And so I'm very thankful and humbled because of her.
Let me ask this question, because so then how did, since we're bringing up God, because I have no problem talking about God, how did God prepare you to feel, because obviously now you look back and you've been married for so long, how did you recognize God's hand in preparing you to be worthy enough to take your wife and ask her into marriage?
Yeah, I don't know an exact moment. I'm not sure, but I know that, when you read scripture, God talks a lot about how much he loves us and how we're all sinful and we all have created sin, or we all have sin in us, and that not one is greater than the other. And, those who repent and truly believe and turn 180, not a 360, because you don't want to go back to it, but turn a 180 on that sin. It's just like, but, well, let me fast forward. The better answer to that would be, recently I heard someone say, when I go before God, I'm going to ask him a lot of questions. Like, why did this child starve to death? Why did this person not have food? Why did this person's house burn down? Why did this happen to my family? Why? And he stopped and he said, as I was thinking about all these questions I'm going to ask God, I never stopped to think that he could ask me those questions. Why did I allow that child to starve? Why did I not see, where that house could catch on fire and I could have helped save them by, offering them a few dollars to fix a furnace? why didn't I reach out to that homeless person and offer a sandwich or a blanket? You know, he can turn around and ask all those questions of me. And so so my thought is like, now when I go before God, like I want to be exhausted. What I mean by that is I want to be exhausted that as I grow and grow in my company and I grow as a leader, that there's no question that people have that I love God and that, but I recognize that God loved me first. And so as far as preparing for it, like, I just knew that I'm a child of the King of Kings. Like he doesn't want me to be here and manifest in anger, God, or sadness or depression or whatever you want to call it. And because the truth is that God convicts, but Satan condemns.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I live in that condemnation of divorce, then I'm not glorifying God. I'm only exalting what Satan wants, right? But if I understand that, hey, I'm convicted, I messed up, I made a mistake, I've asked for forgiveness, then I know that I am free, I'm clear to go, and and I'm thankful for that.
Oh man, dang, dude, that is so good. Wait, let me make this point real quick, because what you were saying brought me into thinking of a passage, right? A scriptural passage. Hey guys, look, you believe in God or not, you believe in the higher power or whatever, the universal, it doesn't matter. Everything else self-manifests in this proper way. When you come to a realization that we're all human and we all make mistakes and we all fall short, but there's a way to be forgiven. And I think it's so, I mean, look, it says, who has repented of his sins, nevertheless, the same is forgiven, then I, the Lord, remember them no more. I, as humans in society, as we think about this, we think that, yes, you read a lot of scripture and there's God on the outside doesn't seem like he's very happy or very nice. He seems very mean and very this person of entity that can just strike fear down to somebody. But that yet he always says, with a humbled heart, and you repent, I forgive them. And if he forgets the sin, you need to forget the sin. And I love how you correlated that between that and, going through divorce, right? A lot of us, me and myself included, going through that divorce is a huge punch in the gut. It is one of those things that you never want to experience. I had 4 children, right? I went through a 2-year divorce with my ex. And it's not fun. I don't care if you have any kids, no kids. There is no such thing as an amicable divorce. There really isn't, because of the emotional attachment that you have wrapped into it.
Right.
Man, that is so good, Scott. I told you guys. I told you, buckle up, play that again. Go back and rewind that a few minutes and listen to what Scott just delivered. Whether you're divorced or not, or you're still married, that is such beautiful, beautiful commentary and beautiful understanding from a man who's been through the fire and has come out to say, hey, look, I'm polished. Still not all the way there, but I'm polished because I know who I am.
Yeah. I mean, look, we all have permission to be happy, man. God wants us to be happy. And so it's like, there's the people that tend to hold us back starts with ourselves. 2 Timothy 1:7 says, God did not give us the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. And so it's like, you got to be able to tap into what he gave us in scripture to live out our lives. Because truth be told, no matter how successful I get, if you want to look at success from a financial perspective, I look at it from a safety perspective. Like, my success is based on how safe was I for my family? Did I lead my family to Christ? Did I keep them safe? Always feeling like there's a place to call home. Did I provide food, a roof, all those things? Like, that to me is success. And so, but as you grow in success, no matter what, if we're going to focus on, let's say, monetary success, like getting to the top is awesome. I would assume, I'm not quite there yet, but I would assume that's awesome getting to the top. But man, is it going to be a lonely place? Like I just talked with an investor today who's looking at investing in our company. He had this incredible windfall of finances. And I just told him, I said, hey, look, I'm going to pitch it to you. but I'm not going to bother you after that. I said, because you're going to have enough people coming out of the woodwork that are going to be pitching and asking for your money, and you've got to make the best decisions with it. I know that I'm going to be okay. My company's going to be fine. But you make that decision in. And then him and I, as we were chatting more, it's just like, he's like, you're absolutely right though. Like, people are coming out of the woodwork. I don't know a lot of these people. And so he's like, so now I'm here and I have all these wealth. And he's like, but who can I enjoy that with? Because, I'm not going to pay for everyone, because that's like this charity case. But at the same time, you want to go and do things, and if you don't pay for it, they can't come with you. So it becomes, anyways, I'm kind of going around, but I just think that people need to understand, like, they have permission to be happy. They have permission to be successful. Success is different to everybody, and coming through, divorce is, certainly tough, but man, it's like being married to my queen is like, if that's what I had to do to get there, then that's what I had to do. I'm thankful for the steps that it took to meet my wife.
So that part, what you just elaborated on, is absolutely beautiful. Let's look at the steps that Scott went through, right, to get to where he is today. And we're going to talk about his accolades, because you're right. There is a huge correlation between getting yourself right and being happy and where you are today. Scott had to go through the refiner's fire, right? Went through divorce. Maybe that was his journey. That was his calling, to go through this so others could benefit. The second one was to prepare himself, give himself permission to be happy, right? I mean, you go back to the I am statements. There's plenty of things, but the best thing about the I am statement is declaring that I am happy, I can be loved, I am full of grace, I'm full of truth, right? There's all of these ways you can use I am statements. Then he met a man who is now his father-in-law. I mean, meeting somebody that can look through and pierce the soul of somebody because of what he has seen. Anybody who goes and asks for their daughter's wife or their daughter's hand in marriage, that is very scary. I know that feeling of asking for my wife's hand in marriage with her parents. That was nerve-wracking. And then having them seeing you be this new light, this new version of yourself. No wonder why they called up and said, here's the money. Don't even think about it. We believe in you because you have allowed yourself the grace. You've allowed yourself the ability to feel, to be happy, to be joyful. And it's not about the monetary. It was about, this will help me do things for others that people have done for me. And then you marry your queen. I always tell people, man, I refer to my wife as the hot wife, because she is. To me, she is the hot wife, right? And because of her and through her, the light and the expression of joy and everything that I get that radiates into me from her, others can be benefited.
Yeah. Amen. Agreed.
Stop, Scott. We could stop here and call it good, but we won't. We won't. I need to ask you a few more. I want to ask you this one question. I want to kind of go back into, because you brought us back to your entrepreneurship. Listen, I must be wrong, because I thought entrepreneurship was easy, right? I mean, look, social media, you see all the successful entrepreneurs driving the fancy cars or flying all over the world, right? They're throwing money at the camera. So what is the difference? And you can speak to this because you are an authoritarian of this. What is the difference between false entrepreneur and real life entrepreneurship?
I mean, that's a loaded question. I mean, I guess you'd have to really ask yourself, what is an entrepreneur, right? My wife and I, we talk a lot about the fact that she's a really amazing business owner. She really is. She's incredible, but she's not an entrepreneur. So how do you disassociate the two? How can you be a business owner and not an entrepreneur? What really is the definition? And I would say the definition, I mean, you can look it up, but the definition is someone who's willing to take on, extreme financial risk, in light of being successful. And then you have a business owner who understands the metrics needed and necessary to keep that business growing. And so there certainly is a significant difference, but the joke that, a lot of people hear about entrepreneurs is entrepreneurship is the only job that you work 80 hours just so you don't have to work 40. It's like, but the truth is, I think, and I'm tapping into this more and more over the last year, is that entrepreneurship really is it's a lifestyle. I mean, it really is. Like my wife and I, at nighttime, what do we do? Kids go to bed, we're sitting down, not supposed to have a late night snack, but maybe having a late night snack, watching, some show to just completely disconnect from the day. And then what do? We turn off the TV, we look at each other and say, okay, grab your phone. She grabs her phone, I grab my phone, and I say, all right, what's your calendar look like tomorrow? What's my calendar look like tomorrow? Hey, what does your Thursday, Friday look like? Hey, what's our schedule this Saturday, Sunday? Now, unfortunately for her, I'll tell her what is on my schedule. She'll tell me what's on her schedule, but she'll have to tell me what's on her schedule probably another 100 times because I'm listening, but I won't remember. But it really is a lifestyle. Like we're getting ready to go on vacation next week. And on our vacation, we're heading to Myrtle Beach to go camping. And I love camping for entrepreneurs because it's a better way to disconnect. It's easy to get trapped in a hotel. You just go down to the coffee, whatever, where the coffee shop is, and turn on your laptop and start working. All of a sudden, boom, it's noon and kids are already out playing. You've missed half of it. When you go camping, it's not quite like that. You got to be quiet in the camper because it's loud. Every move you make is loud. You don't want to wake anybody up, So, and then when the kids are up, they're right in your face. So you really can't work. And I'm noticing with my kids more and more, my kids are 6, 4, and 1. And I'm noticing more and more is that my children are catching on to daddy being busy. And I know that they don't fully understand what it's like to build $1 billion company, because I didn't know what it was like to build $1 billion company, and I'm still learning. But it's one of those things where if you want to be an entrepreneur, you need to understand it's a lifestyle. If you want to be a business owner, there's plenty of companies out there you can go buy and you can run, and that's great. Trust me, it's a great way to make an income. It's a great way to provide for your family, no doubt. But entrepreneurship is a lifestyle. And if you think you're in a marriage and you're not both going to be an entrepreneur in some regard, although like the joke is like, I'm the entrepreneur, my wife is a business owner, but we're both bought into the lifestyle. And when you're married or you have a significant other, you both have to be bought into the lifestyle, because if you're not, it's only going to create friction. It's going to create arguments. When something goes wrong, there'll be too many I told you so's versus we'll figure these out. And that's the important part in a partnership, in a marriage, and is that, your attitude should always be, hey, we're going to fall. We know that we're going to fall, but we're going to fall forward. We're not going to fall backwards. We're going to figure this out together. And so hopefully that answers your question there. Entrepreneurship, it's hard work. It does give you a lot of freedom, though, with autonomy to your schedule. But know that if you're going to give up some of your hours to go do something in the middle of the day, you're going to pay for that later in the evening.
Oh man, I love how you separate out business owner and entrepreneur, right? I love the massive distinction between the two, because there is, and you laid it out so beautifully. Those of you that are thinking, man, I want to be an entrepreneur, did you catch what he said? It's a lifestyle. It's like we buy a car because I like this car. We live in a certain neighborhood because that's where we want to live. You want to be an entrepreneur. It's a lifestyle. This is what we do. This is what I do day in and day out. That's my lifestyle. Being able to separate out, family time to, work time is massive. And guys, look, he has the accolades. Look, he's the co-founder and CEO of Magazine Jukebox. We'll talk a little bit about that later, right? He's the co-owner an SNL Insurance and Financial Service. How much involvement do you have in that? Just out of curiosity.
With the insurance companies now, really none. My wife runs them, and I'm, if advice is needed, they'll ask me a question, but I really haven't worked in them very much.
This goes back to, remember Remember, he couldn't pay payroll, and now he's like, hey, I got people that run them that are smarter than me. That's the beauty. Find people that are smarter than you to replace you so you can go do the things that you want to do. And he's a podcast, right? Which if you haven't listened to it, we'll have the link down here. It'll be in the bio. Go and listen to it. Biztainment Weekly is
Biztainment Weekly.
Biztainment.
Yep. Biztainment Weekly.
Oh, dang. Because you never gave up, because you never listened to that internal voice, because you arrived to a place in a space that you said, I'm worthy and I'm now going to be able to change the trajectory of what my life I thought it was going to be, listened to God's voice, followed it, and now I am here today. Take us through what the governor said.
Well, that has nothing to do with insurance. That has nothing to do with my podcast. That's for sure. So yeah, a couple of days ago, Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia issued a press release on it's on Magazine Jukebox. Magazine Jukebox, for those listening or watching, we are a digital magazine rack for commercial spaces. So if you imagine going into a doctor's office, you can scan our code. You can have a list of 12 different magazines: People Magazine, Car and Driver, HGTV, all the big ones, some regional ones. We're hoping to grow our regional brand, but you would scan it and you can just read a magazine right from your phone. What separates us from some of the other things that are out there is that we're not an app. We don't collect personal information in order for you to read a magazine. So we actually use geofencing and timestamping, so that way the company is actually paying for our service. So when you scan it, you actually have to be in their location. But the cool thing is once you scan it, you're in that location. You could actually take the magazine home as long as you don't clear out your browser. You could take it home for up to 36 hours. Then it timestamps out. But so we launched that company January of last year of 2022. It actually went live. It's been in the works since August of 2020. My wife and I invented this product in our kitchen. And the story behind that was we were actually just going to open up a coffee shop. We wanted to have something a little more lighthearted. And I wanted this magazine wall, and we were going to call the coffee shop Coffee and Cream. Feel free. Anybody can steal this, because the idea was to have a little bit of ice cream, a little bit of coffee. And if you want to mix some of those, you could. And so that we were just going to call it Coffee and Cream. But COVID hit, and we knew that we had our employees, and really key here is that our employees, were just like all of us, we were really, worried about what was going to happen. Had no idea. Companies were shutting down. People were having to go work remote. They didn't know what the future looked like. How long is this going to last? No clue. And it was really scary. It was a really scary moment. And, Lauren and I were faced with some big decisions at that moment, because we allocated some funds for opening up this coffee shop. And we said, we need to go and reassure our staff that even if the money's not coming in through revenue of the policies that we write, that we've set aside some money to protect their jobs, so that way they can continue to provide for their families, even, and we'll do it until the money runs out. When the money runs out, we'll all be in the same boat, and we'll go figure it out from there. And luckily, there are some programs out there that got released pretty quick. I'm thankful for the government releasing those, the PPP program that was a lot of businesses were able to tap into. We certainly tapped into it. And, that was very, very helpful. It allowed us to do that. But then fast forward about 6 months into COVID, and my wife was like, coffee shops have really kind of figured it out. All joking aside to Catholic faith, but it was like the offering stick at a Catholic church, where they have these long sticks and, want you to, put your tithe and offering in. And I was like, yeah, coffee shops are like offering coffee through the tithing stick, whatever they call that. So I said, yeah, they figured it out, and which is really cool. And I said, but I can't have my magazine wall. And I was like this stubborn old man for a second. I was just like, I want my magazine wall. And I was thinking like Barnes and Noble, kind of feel vibe to it. Like you can go and grab a magazine, grab a cup of coffee. Please don't steal it, but you probably will. Don't spill on it, but you probably will. One of those things. So so when we knew we couldn't have magazines, I was like joking with my wife. I was like, man, I'm surprised that there's not a way like you could just scan a code and enjoy a magazine without having to give all this personal information. My wife made the cardinal sin. She said, well, why isn't there? You see, you don't want to ever challenge an entrepreneur because they're going to try to figure it out. And so I started doing all this R&D and on it and figuring it out, started writing up, produced a patent, like submitted for a patent as a pro se on some of the technology that we were going to use. I had to create what is called an MVP, minimal viable product. Had to create what is called a pitch deck, so that way we could start bringing on investors. I mean, all kinds of stuff. I had to get it over to publishers because we'd be dead in the water if we didn't have publishers. Luckily and prayerfully, we ended up landing the 2 largest publishers in the country right off the bat because they love the concept and idea. That's a whole nother story, but bottom line is learn people's email systems or systems out there that you can use and tap into and just start blasting out emails if you have a great idea, and hopefully you'll get in front of the right people. In this case, I did. And also whiteboard videos are a great, inexpensive way to create a concept. Like if you're trying to draw out a concept, use a whiteboard video. And so, yeah, so anyways, we incorporated in August. We thought we had something. We started raising capital. And in 2021, we had our MVP. We had, we raised, $750,000 from investors. And then I was able to bring on our COO, John, and who has over 25 years of experience in publications. And and that was a key hire. And then so we started this company again January of last year, and in 1 year we blew up to over 6,000 locations. We're adding maybe 20 hospitals or medical offices a week, and it just continues to grow. So then caught wind over there at the governor's office, and what's crazy about the governor's office, this is like the really cool stuff, is like we get an email with working with Norfolk and the VDEP, which is the Virginia Economic, maybe I'm saying it wrong, I think it's Economic Development Program, and those guys over there are just incredible. And of course, cities are always looking for businesses that bring outside money in because a restaurant's great, but typically that's recycling money inside the city. Those people probably live in the city, they're bringing their money into the restaurant that's staying in the city, and they go home. But versus our company, 95% of our business is outside of the state. So we're bringing all this money in from other states. So, so the city and that development team really got a hold of us, and then the governor, and they said, hey, the governor probably, may be interested in doing something with you, but no guarantees, and everything's like hush hush. And then we had to get this confidentiality form, and then we're like getting this confidential. So we've kind of known about this press release coming out, for a little while, but we couldn't tell anybody. And then the press release hit, and Governor Youngkin gave us a praise report, I like to call it, talking about how we're going to be investing $1 million into the city of Norfolk in Virginia, and that how we are going to be hiring 20 plus new employees, and which is super exciting. And the fact that the governor has even caught wind of us and that he's interested in listening to us is just incredible. I mean, we never thought 3 years ago, sitting in our kitchen, that we would get a quote and a comment from the highest ranking person in our state. Never thought that. Maybe I'll get mentioned in the newspaper, but that's about it. Well, anyways, it just blew up, and it's been really exciting, super exciting.
Gosh, you guys go back and just listen to this part. Up to this point, we have learned so much about a man who's just humble, who just is like, it's his lifestyle. When he talked about this is your lifestyle, this is what he does. This is Scott. Don't challenge an entrepreneur because he will figure it out. And the second part, he's like, he's never thought that anybody outside would recognize what he's doing. The highest level in the state is now like, this is freaking awesome. Congratulations. And then when this hits to the 9 countries that follow the art study of you, just wait and see what happens. Get ready. I'm telling Scott, get ready, because you never know what will happen. I know what will happen. You have a great calling in life, and it's being manifested through the little wins and the little simplistic things, but always giving it back to where the inspiration and the knowledge came from. So God gave him gifts and talents. Go reap out the talents. He said, here's your talent. What are you going to do with it?
Well, and something I don't talk about a lot would be, I mean, it's basically out there at this point, but the irony is that God's gifts are stronger than any gift man will ever give you. And the funny thing is that I knew the gift that man was trying to give me wasn't good enough. So that's why I dropped out of high school and never even got my GED. And I just went after business. School was in my way. Now, that is not a recommendation. And that is not me putting a stamp of approval, because there's so many things that I learned through Hard Knocks that I could have learned if I would have stayed in school and went to college. For sure. I would have learned those years ago, things that I'm learning today. But that being said, I'm very thankful for the path that I was put on.
Oh, I love that. Because you brought it up, I want to bring, let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about, because people that are listening to this are like, well, gosh, he probably had just an easy life. I mean, what do you mean it graduate from high school? Wait, time out. Because if I'm listening to this, I'm going to go time out. What do you mean? Take us into those those earlier childhood, right? Because how you grew up and where you grew up and the movement, the constant moving back and forth with parents, it's very key to this inner deep feeling that Scott has of, I'm going to make it right. I know I can get through these hard times because I remember the hard times that I went through. So help us understand a little bit about what you just said. You went through the hard knocks. Take us a little bit into that insight of kind of how that lifestyle was for you as a child.
Yeah, so lifestyle for me, basically grew up in California, right outside of Los Angeles, right outside of Hollywood. And, my mother and my father, they got a divorce when I was 6. And, my mom, my mom and dad were both pretty incredible people in their own right. That doesn't mean that they're perfect, and they got a lot of things, as me being a parent now, they got a lot of things wrong. But one of the things that I share with people a lot is my mom had to make her bed every single day. And a lot of people have heard this story, like, yeah, that's how you become successful. You got to make your bed every single day. It's not what I mean. My mom had to make her bed every single day because it was the living room couch. We only had one bedroom, and inside the bedroom was bunk beds for me and my brother. And so if she didn't make her bed, we wouldn't have a couch to sit on. We would have to, and all this was in a mobile home. And so, it's like, to understand, like, humble beginnings. My mom was a waitress. She was a bus driver. Ultimately, she ended up becoming fairly successful in her own right, became a real estate agent. Well, she started out at timeshares and then was really good at that. And then she opened up her real estate company with a partner of hers, did really good at that, and ended up doing pretty good for a little bit. And then ultimately, closed the company. But so I'm proud of her for, what she accomplished and raising basically 2 kids. My father, on the other hand, at the age of 6 to like 13, he really wasn't active in our lives. And, we would see him in, every now and then. He basically was moving all over the country. He was a government employee, and he was a money chaser. So if there was a promotion opportunity in another state, he would take it. He didn't really care about the ramifications of, it'll cost him $10,000 to move to make a $10,000 raise. Now you got to work there for 2 years, but then he doesn't work there for 2 years and does another one. So he never got to see the raise. Like, he's still making the same money. So, so I mean, my upbringing was fine. I mean, my brother and I did not get along at all. I mean, it was full on fist fights growing up. Him and I now are very close. We talk probably every other day. I'm thankful for that. And a lot of that changed when my father passed away. I think something changed in my brother, that he recognized that, hey, this is it. This is what we got. And, but I am proud of my brother. I'm proud to be his brother most days. not every day. If he listens to this, just knows most days. But it was hard. It was hard growing up. It wasn't easy. I was picked on a lot. But I maintain a really cocky attitude, which is I think it was more of a defense mechanism. Didn't happen until fast forward until I was probably in my early 20s or my late teens. And I remember a guy that I considered was my best friend. His name was Mike. And I remember talking to him, and he looked at me and he just like, Scott, you don't have to wear all these masks. You can take them off. We like the Scott that you are. And that really, kind of, it was like a double punch. Like one punch was like this weight of like, wait a minute, you like me for who I am? I'm not used to that. And then the other punch was like, what are you talking about? I'm not wearing any mask, So it was like, but yeah, it was an interesting upbringing. I ended up landing here in Virginia Beach when I turned 16. And really been here ever since, and thankful to be here. But when I was 16 years old, basically the guidance counselor said, hey, you've got 2 years left of school or a year and a half left of school, but you're going to have to do another year just to catch up on credits because you moved. I lived in over 8 different states between the age of 13. Well, from the age of 12 to 16. I was in 8 different states, 11 different schools, or 7 or 10 different schools. And so by time things like, it was so bad that my dad was like going to move, and he was going to put me in an apartment at the age of like 15 to live by myself. And he was just going to send me money to go to the grocery store and buy food. Like, he was so interested in progressing in his career. I didn't want to go back home because I made the decision when I was 12 that I was going to live with my father, and my mom didn't like that. In fact, I had to lie to her that I was just going to visit, and then I called her like 2 weeks before I was supposed to return for school and just told her, hey, I'm not coming home. And my dad was kind of backing that hostility, which was, now looking back, was pretty bad. He should have figured out a way to make it work, but he was like telling me that I'll threaten to go to court and divorce my mom, and like all these things, and it's just stuff that a 12-year-old should not be enduring. So it wasn't. But I take all that, like some of the rocks of my life, or my Nana was my rock. Her and I are very close. It was devastating when she passed away 2 years ago, but she was 94 years old. She lived a great life. I mean, incredible human being. Wrote some of the curriculum in the LA Unified School District, and she worked her way up to being a principal. She had 2 doctorates. I mean, just incredible. And completely devastated, when she passed away, but we knew it was coming. But she was my rock, and so it's yeah. I mean, would I change anything in my past? I think maybe I would have stuck it out in school, because I missed things like prom and missed playing football and things like that. But if that meant I didn't get to where I am today, then no, I wouldn't change a thing.
Did you catch all of that? Those of you that are listening on this, go back and listen to that. The growth of this, of Scott. My gosh, man. At 12, he said, I got to live with my dad. Then he's like, at 16, I'm done moving. I'm staying here. Your dad was going to send you, live in an apartment by yourself, send you money to live. And then you have your buddy tell you at the age of 20, hey, we like this version of you. You don't have to wear all these different masks. We could get into all of this. We could go down this road. The reason I'm glad he brought this up is because it's not about where you start. It's not about how or where you were raised or what you were brought up with, the ideology or whatever it is. You get a choice. You get that choice not to live by the labels that quote unquote society slap on you. Come on. He's telling you, Scott's telling you, you have the ability to be whatever you want. You just have to figure out a way to go do it. And with God, we've heard this through this entire interview, with God at the helm, what isn't possible. Now, look, I'm 45. There's no way if I think I'm going to be an NBA basketball player. Let's get to reality, people. That's not happening. Okay. It's not happening. Let me ask this question. I need to make, because run out of time. I want to be respectful of your time. Does the feeling of imposter syndrome ever creep in? Meaning that, people were to listen to this and go, man, you had a rough upbringing, or you had this, you had all these masks that you're wearing. You didn't graduate high school. I mean, the fabrications of probably lies that you've told, has that imposter ever creeped up? And if so, how do you combat that?
Yeah, it's funny. This is the second time today I've heard imposter syndrome. And, I don't think I've ever really put any time or energy on what that would mean in my life. Like, I don't really know. Like, I'm going to be me. I've made mistakes. I believe life is lived through seasons, not through months. And so, like, what season am I in? There's, over the last, 4 months, 5 months, I've been on a, really good health, it's important to be healthy. So I'm down 50 pounds in 4 months. Like I'm, there's a lot of things that I'm, that I'm doing that I do in seasons but the imposter syndrome, I would almost feel like, am I good enough? Am I valuable enough to give advice? There's this old, years ago when I was younger and I was on a missions trip up in New York City. And I remember I was just like gung ho, and I could not understand why these people did not want to give their life to Christ. I just did not understand it. And a pastor spoke to me, and he's like, Scott, listen, man. He goes, I love the passion. He goes, I think what you're doing is great, and you're planting a seed, which is important. He said, but a lot of people aren't going to necessarily listen to you because they don't know you. And when you don't know someone, you have to earn permission to speak into someone's life. And so me now, I'm getting a lot of these, podcasts and talking events and coming out and speaking. And I think if I was going to relate anything to imposter syndrome, it would be when I get up and speak, I feel like, why am I speaking? Like, what do I have to say that would be important or can help someone? So what I've learned is that it is important for me to share my story. It's important for me to share my message and encourage people. I don't know a lot of these people that I speak to or that I've seen. So I haven't earned permission to speak into their life. But what I could do is speak about my life. And if they want that to speak in their life, then they can choose to accept that. That's their choice. So I think from an, imposter standpoint, I don't feel like I'm an imposter at all. I feel like I've never felt like I'm doing anything, wrong, or I shouldn't be where I'm at. I think I'm exactly where God wants me. I think that, I think that many times in our world that, God will give us a permissive will and a perfect will. And a lot of times we miss the mark and we'll get onto his permissive will. But I'm not a pastor, I'm not someone who reads, the word of God every day. I should, I do pray every day and I do read scripture, often. But I think that my identity is through him, and so there's, whoever he wants me to be is who I'll be.
Fisher of men. That's what you are. Dadgum fisher of men. You guys listen to this. You'll play it multiple times, but from humble beginnings, you're now seeing the sprouting of what can become by just allowing yourself to love yourself. This interview is just absolutely powerful. Man, as we wrap up, Scott, tell us how can people want to reach out, want to learn more about you? We've learned about, obviously your business. Tell us, how can we reach out to you? How can we find you? We'll have all the links down below and obviously in the bio, but how can we reach out if we want to follow you and connect with you?
So From a company perspective, please follow us on all socials at Magazine Jukebox. In regard, I mean, you can even type in needmagazines.com. That's another way to get to our site. But as far as me personally, I live and breathe everything in LinkedIn. And, find me on LinkedIn, Scott Janney, Janney. Looks like Janney. I'll take either. Doesn't really matter. But yeah, I think that finding me on LinkedIn, send me a connection request, follow me, whatever you want to do. I always love to put out, little things that's going on in my world or how I can help in business. And yeah, I mean, that's really it. I don't have a Facebook account. Don't really have an Instagram account. Everything, all that is business. I leave that to, those who thrive on likes and messages. Me, however, I like to give advice and help out and encourage people. Again, I want to get to the top. I just don't want to do it alone.
Go follow him. I love his content. I love his stuff on LinkedIn. I've been following him for quite some time. And the fact that he allowed me to share his story, I'm completely humbled and honored to do so. As we wrap up this incredible interview, let me ask you this question. If you were to see your 5-year-old self today, what do you think he would say to you?
What would my 5-year-old self say to me?
Yes.
Should have got healthier a long time ago. Should have been more, should have been more engaged with my health and eating right and exercising properly long time ago. But I think that the other thing is that he would tell me, in your younger years, and I say younger years, in my 20s and 30s, of course, appreciate the time you're given. I would bring my dad back in a heartbeat. I'd love to see him. I could still smell the Old Spice cologne that he wears. I the rough scruff, cheek, giving him a hug. I would do anything to get that back. And so almost anything. Wouldn't give up the life that I have, though. And I love my dad. And that's a hard thing to say. It's hard to, you get to a point in your life where, like, my wife and my kids are, the most important thing on this earth, for me. And so, but, when you miss your loved ones, you hug the ones that are around you a little bit tighter. And so I just tell myself to enjoy. And I also think, maybe I took business too serious, too young. I was like I was gung-ho being a business owner when I was 16, and I think, knowing what I know now, I probably should have enjoyed being 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 a little bit more. I think that while a lot of my friends were out partying, making memories, I'm sitting at Barnes & Noble reading books that I couldn't afford, but I had to stay there and read them, but I could afford the $1.50 coffee at the time, and it's like that was my enjoyment. So, vacations and traveling, a lot of people did, and I didn't do it. And so, yeah, I think that's what I tell myself.
I love it. Dang, man, that's so freaking good. All right, before I let you go, 5 books. Give me 5 books that you would recommend anybody to read, whether it's spiritual, personal development, business development, or just a fun at all, or even podcasts. If you're like, hey, I don't listen to books, but I listen to podcasts, or I listen to audiobooks. Give me 5 good nuggets that we could add to the collection that I've already got going.
Okay, the number 1 book sold in the world in history, the Bible. It's a good one. Second one, probably second favorite book, I really want to change. So Help Me God by James. That starts with an M. Can't think of his last name. But I really want to change. So Help Me God. And there's, I want to say it was like page like 46. I don't remember. Don't hold me to it, but it says, I don't take another breath to glorify myself. I take another breath to glorify him.
Mm.
And so I always remember that. Uh, some more modern stuff that I've enjoyed. Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. That was a good one. Um, uh, can't think of the name. Chip and Joe, but Chip, he wrote it. I can't think of the name, but they had a show on HGTV for a little while.
Yep.
But
Oh,
Chip's book.
I'll find.
Yeah,
We'll
it's
have
two
it.
of
Don't
them.
worry.
Yeah.
We'll have it. Don't
Yeah.
worry.
And but some more business savvy books. Exit Path is a great book. I'm gonna try to pull them up real quick because I have the authors. But Exit Path by I'm gonna last name is Parang, Parang. Great book. A podcast that I love listening to is by John Warlow, Built to Sell Radio. Absolutely excellent. And then last one, I know I went over five, but CEO Excellence by Carolyn Duar. I'm currently listening to that one on audiobook, but but you didn't ask me the right question, Cameron, so I'm going to pick on you here. You should
All
have
right.
asked me what are my favorite magazines.
Ah, dang it. I knew it.
So I would
I
say a
should
couple of
have.
my favorite magazines, right, is Harvard Business Review. I think is an excellent magazine. It's expensive, I understand, so not everybody can get it. The next magazine that I would recommend is called Chief Executive, and that's a really good book for CEOs. And then not book magazines. And then I would say some more leisure magazines, or as I like to call them, magazines that inspire me. Yacht Magazine is inspiring. I'll never own a yacht. I'll never own a yacht because it's just way too much of a headache, I think. But I'll definitely enjoy like renting one for a week.
Yeah.
And then I love, a lot of shout outs to the people that we have on our platform, especially early adopters. Like Jazz Time magazine is a fantastic magazine all about the history of music. I never really thought I would love it as much as I do. Car and Driver magazine is always a classic, great magazine. And of course, if you want to live vicariously through People magazine. So there you go. There's a whole slew of books and magazines that I would share.
That's fantastic, man. And good. Hey, been called out a lot on these podcasts, and that was probably should have been a no-brainer at the beginning. Jukebox magazine. You would think I would say magazine instead of books. But hey, we always live and learn. I love it.
It's funny that you say like Jukebox magazine. We actually own that domain. So if someone types in Jukebox magazine, it'll actually go to Magazine Jukebox. It's pretty funny.
See,
it wasn't available when we first opened it up. And there is actually an old magazine publication out there that's called Jukebox Magazine. And when we were getting our copyrights and our trademarks and all that, you have to clearly identify yourself, and they can't be mixed mingling of words. Like imagine if it was, Amazon, but then you spell it backwards, and that's you can't do that, stuff. So, but then all of a sudden, 6 months into building our company, all of a sudden Jukebox Magazine came available, and I just bought it up really quick. So that way we can, if somebody types it in one way or the other, we own both.
It's amazing, guys. You have heard from a master servant, master leader, master of so many gifts. Scott, I cannot begin to thank you enough for being a part of this project, getting on. Let me tell your story. This is going to be inspirational to so many. I've been inspired. And the good thing about this is I get to go back and listen to this before it even drops. That's the beauty of this. I get to go back and listen to it. And that's why I love doing this, guys. Go share this, like this, send this out, leave a comment. Go follow Scott on LinkedIn because it's a lot of fun listening to the nuggets that he drops on LinkedIn. But share, like, comment about this. Tell us what you loved about this interview, and give us some comments and feedback because we absolutely love this. This is why this is one of the fastest, again, growing. Last year, we were in the top 25% of the most shared globally. Scott's going to be part of that. We have 9 countries that this in. Man, and it's all because people are like Scott, give so much of their time and willingness to allow me to share their story. Go follow Magazine Jukebox because it is awesome. Just like this interview, this has been another great, fantastic episode. We will catch you on the next episode. Have a great day, guys. Everyone, we love you.